Well, due to the pandemic, a lot of entrepreneurs have been going into business, it seems. Along our attorney, Brian King, our business attorney and thought leader on AugustaBusinessDaily.com. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Fantastic. It seems like some entrepreneurs are working from home, but things seem to be getting back to normal as we're towards March
Right.
now. Any advice for entrepreneurs that maybe want to enter into a lease and go to an office building or maybe a retail location?
Well, yeah, one of the first things that a client business owner is going to do after they get their company formed and we go through all of the preliminary stuff, then they're going to look for a place to have their business if they're not going to be working from home. And so location is going to be very important as to where they're going to be located. Are people going to find them and find their business? And so and then we have. Sometimes I wind up reviewing a few different lease agreements for my clients because they may be choosing between a couple or two or three different places. And sometimes the lease terms can be so varying and different between the different locations, and because they've got different landlords and different requirements and all of that. But we look at several different things when we're reviewing the leases. And so one of the things we look at is how long is the term and are there options to renew? Because if a client is going to be successful and they want to, stay in that location for a period of years, but they don't want to commit to that long-term lease right at the front. Right, exactly. A lot of landlords want 5-year commitment. And so if we can get the landlord to agree to, say, a 1 to 3 year initial term, with a couple of options to renew, and we've already got the rental rate set for those additional years, then that's perfect for the client because then they have options. If the business were to fail or they decide to move somewhere else, they've got that option. Or if they want to continue in that location, they've got that option. Some of the other provisions in the lease that we want to look at relate to the condition of the premises, whether there needs to be a build out or some change to the location to fit the client's business. We also look at the HVAC system. How new is it? Does it need to be repaired before they move in, or does it need to be some limit or cap set on what the tenant would have to spend to repair it if necessary? Things like that. In addition to a lot of jurisdiction provisions where they would litigate if there's a problem, whether there's going to be attorney's fees provision, if the prevailing party can get attorney's fees and that sort of thing too.
Sure.
So all kinds of things.
Well, we're continuing to chat with business attorney Brian King, and you can find information for Brian online at businessattorneylaw.com. He has offices in Augusta and also Atlanta. And you often see the term CAM, in leases, whether it be office or whether it be retail. What does that stand for, and what are the types of components to that?
Yeah, so CAM stands for Common Area Maintenance.
Okay.
And so the lease will set forth who's going to be responsible for maintenance of the common areas, such as the walkways in front of the facility, or landscaping, things like that. So, generally, the landlord's going to want the tenant to have to pay for that, and so they'll take the annual cost of what they expect the maintenance cost to be, and they'll have the tenant pay that as part of in addition to their rent each month. And then if there's a discrepancy between what was actually spent and what was collected, then they'll true up that amount at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. What should a business owner do if the landlord maybe isn't fixing things? Like, for instance, if you have rent due on the 1st, can you make the repairs and just send them a little note and say, I made the repairs and I'm deducting $425?
Generally not. So generally the lease is going to say, that you cannot do that. And the lease says that you have to make your rent payment regardless of whether the landlord is doing what they should be doing. And so the best course of action would then be to go ahead and pay the rent so that the tenant is not in breach of the lease. and then you can work with the landlord to try to get that fixed if you needed to take them to court, or or negotiate with them on getting to them to follow the terms of the lease. So, because the lease should state what the landlord is responsible for versus what the tenant is responsible for covering.
Okay. And we should say some of our conversation actually stemmed from a conversation Brian had with our reporter Josh Heath of AugustaBusinessDaily.com. And Brian is one of our thought leaders, so he has articles and he has podcasts on our website. I invite you to check that out if you'd like to learn even more details about having a lease. And again, just go to AugustaBusinessDaily.com and you'll see our thought leaders section, and just drop down to Brian. And before we let you scoot, as it relates to maybe real estate and even leases and such, I know some people may not want to invest in a volatile stock market, but they may want to invest in a strip center, or they may want to invest in property. Can you assist with that?
I can, yes, and I have several clients who wanted to do real estate investing, whether it be buying residential homes to rent out to military folks, or just anyone really, or whether it's investing into a commercial venture. So with the residential or the commercial, though, the first thing I would do with the client is we would form an LLC or a holding company to hold that real estate, so that they wouldn't have they limit their exposure, personally, their personal assets. We protect their personal assets from what could happen with the real estate. So and then I also prepare the lease agreements between them, the LLC, and the tenants who are going to be renting the property. And with some of the commercial ventures, like sometimes I'll have a group of clients that come together and they want to invest in just commercial real estate all over a particular area because they know the area really well. And so I'll set up an operating agreement between them, and they'll each put in certain, contribute certain funds to the company, and they'll have certain financial rights as to what they will receive when the company makes money. And but they're all protected. They all have limited liability in that venture. So,
and once again, the best way to get in touch with Brian is just go to his website. A lot of great resources and information, and it's businessattorneylaw.com. And before we end this segment, some enhancements have been made here in the podcast studio. What do you think?
Right, it's a lot brighter.
It's brighter. It has a bit of a Dateline Network feel, which is really great. This is in keeping with some expansion that they're doing. We want to put up a screen if any area business people in the Georgia, Carolina area, or even across the United States, they've actually rebranded, and it's Get On Up Productions. I guess a tip of the cap to James Brown, Augusta's favorite son. And they're able to really do anything worldwide, virtual kind of recording. And we always like to give them a shout out. And the information is up on the screen if you would like to get in touch with either of the partners there, David or Chris.